Today on the podcast, I want to talk to you all about the Christmas shutdown period that the construction industry has traditionally, where a lot of other industries may not have a Christmas shutdown period. And I want to talk to you about the three ways that it can trip you up with your builder.
Are you an Aussie tradie and your paperwork is shady? Do the dockers farm site keep you up late at night? Are you sick of pushing paper, swinging your tools as more you caper? Call us the tricks of your trade.
Welcome to the Tricks of Your Trade podcast, where we talk about trade business topics to help you get through business life unscathed.
Does the builder pay you late and your cash flow fluctuates? Do you dread the office work? Can't afford a full-time clerk? Consider working smarter, don't be a business martyr. Call us the tricks of your trade.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Tricks of Your Trade podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Surson, construction adjudicator, lawyer, and director of Tricks of Your Trade. Today on the podcast, I want to talk to you all about the Christmas shutdown period that the construction industry has traditionally, where a lot of other industries may not have a Christmas shutdown period. And I want to talk to you about the three ways that it can trip you up with your builder. So if you're working for a commercial builder, there's a good chance that there are things that could happen in the Christmas shutdown period that can throw a spanner in the works in terms of your payments, but also can have a bearing on whether or not you're entitled to an extension of time, or you could be exposed for liquidated damages for shutdown periods when the builder's site's not even open. So there's three ways that the Christmas shutdown period in construction can have a bearing on your success of your contract and whether or not you get paid. And the first way is whether or not you're putting in a payment claim that is compliant for the purposes of the Security of Payment Act in Australia. Now, everywhere around Australia, we have different laws to help you get paid. And so if you're a subcontractor or a builder, or you're doing work under a construction contract, there's what's called security of payment laws. And so there's a different act for each state and territory in Australia. And in those laws, it requires you to put in a payment claim when you have what's called a reference date. Now, in your builder's contract, hopefully your contract will say what day you're allowed to put your payment claim in, and that is your reference date for the purpose of the contract. But if the contract doesn't say any day at all, or give you any right to give an invoice, then the Act will default and it will be the last calendar day of the month. Now, when it comes to December, things can go pear-shaped because lots of builders will ask you to put your payment claim in early. And oftentimes, I used to do this when I was a builder's CA, we would phone around and say, can you put your payment claims in by the 13th so that we can have them processed in time for Christmas? Or sometimes we would require them to be put in after Christmas, i.e. put them in January and don't put a payment claim in at all, because we didn't want to have a payment becoming due or any kind of paperwork that would be stagnating over the Christmas period. Now, if your builder's CA is asking you to put your payment claim in early, but they're not expressly saying that they are changing your reference date for the purposes of the Security of Payment Act, I'd strongly recommend you ask them to confirm that they are in fact changing your reference date in December for the purposes of your contract and for the purposes of the Security of Payment Act. This is because if you just take their word for it on the telephone, or if you get a text message or something like that, it may not be sufficiently reliable to have varied the terms of your contract so that your reference date has been changed. So if your normal reference date under the contract is the 25th of the month and that day is Christmas Day, the Security of Payment Act doesn't care that it's Christmas Day. It will still be your reference date for the purposes of the contract. But if the builder was to give you a written direction varying the terms of the contract so that your reference date for December is effectively changed to be the 13th of December, you could rely on that and put your payment claim in. So if your builder wants you to put your payment claim in early, just do it and don't jump up and down about it. But if you're going to do it, you need to ask them to confirm, is this a variation to my reference date for the purposes of the contract and the purposes of the Security of Payment Act, and get them to confirm that in writing for you. Now, the second way that this can get prickly is your due date for that payment claim. So you put in your payment claim and you're thinking, oh, well, that will be due normally, like it normally is every other month. The problem is in almost every state and territory, there are non-business days, additional non-business days for the purposes of the Security of Payment Act. So I'm just going to put on my screen here around Australia. These are the additional shutdown periods for the purposes of the Security of Payment Act. You'll notice that in Victoria, they don't have any additional days, but in every other state and territory, there are additional days that are effectively non-business days for the purposes of the Security of Payment Act. Now, it may not necessarily be that your due date for payment is affected by this. It will only be affected by this if your contract defines a business day as the same as the Security of Payment Act. So if your contract defines your business days to be as per these dates, and include these shutdown periods in the definition of a business day, then you are likely to have your due date later than it normally is, because there's about 5 or 6 additional business days that would not be counted over that period. So quite important, the first step in ascertaining whether or not your due date for payment would be changed because of the Christmas shutdown period is to look at the definition of business day in your builder's contract and ascertain whether the definition of business day marries up with the Security of Payment Act. If it does not marry up with the Security of Payment Act, then the due date for payment may well not be later, but your builder probably thinks it is. And that's because builders work on a this is the way we've always done it basis. And builders will always try to pay you later if they can, because why would they pay you early if they don't have to? So our industry widely accepts that there is a Christmas shutdown period. And even if the builder doesn't have the right to pay you late, nobody will be able to be contacted over the Christmas shutdown period. They will all disappear and the sites won't be open. So you threatening to suspend work over the Christmas shutdown period, the builder's not going to care because the site's not open anyway. So you really need to know when your due dates are going to fall for your November and your December claims, because the shutdown period, if you have a 25 business day wait to get paid after you've given a payment claim, the Christmas shutdown period will also affect your November claims as well as your December claims. So it can be an incredibly difficult period over the Christmas shutdown period for builders' cash flow and also for subcontractors' cash flow, because you still have to pay wages in that period. You can't just say to your staff, no, Christmas shutdown, I'm not paying you your salary. You'll have to wait till I get paid by the builder to get your salary. So it doesn't really work like that. Now, the third way that this can bring you unstuck is the site is not open for business. You cannot get any work done on site, but you're not entitled to an extension of time under your contract. This can be particularly problematic if you had priced a job that you thought was going to start in January this year, and you thought you would have been finished by now. You thought for sure that you'd be on a different job by September, but here we are, almost Christmas Day, and you are still working on this same job. And it could be because of variations. It could be because the builder had delays earlier in the project, and now the Christmas shutdown period is going to further delay your practical completion of your work. So there's one thing I want to just point out for you here is that there is a difference usually in most builders' contracts between the definition of a business day and the definition of a working day. And when you have a look at how time is counted under your extension of time clauses, and whether you're applying for an extension of time to a calendar day, a business day, a working day, or what normal working days would have been, if your builder's contract does not take into consideration the Christmas shutdown period for a normal working day, and the builder does not open the site on those days, then you need to be applying for an extension of time to your date for practical completion. Now, why would you want to do that? You want to do that because you don't want to be exposed for liquidated damages for days when the builder shut their own site and went off on holiday, because it is an incredibly big absurdity that you would be at risk of liquidated damages when the builder hasn't even got the site open for business. But if you don't protect yourself contractually, that is the way the law defaults. It defaults to, well, you had a right to give an extension of time. You didn't give an extension of time. You must have elected not to give one because you did have an entitlement to give an extension of time, and therefore you were taking on the risk that you would still be complete by your date for practical completion. So bear that in mind. And if you are entitled to an extension of time and you're also entitled to delay costs, perhaps you might consider making a claim for that shutdown period as well. There'll be lots of people watching or listening to this who will be thinking that I'm untoward in suggesting that, but interestingly, for many years, the HIA contract for residential building work allowed builders to claim for their own Christmas shutdown period for delay costs. So if you can get delay costs and it is actually delaying you and you're not realising the revenue that you should have realised in the period of time that you were under contract, you need to really start thinking about if the builder's preventing you from being able to finish. And perhaps you did have people who wanted to work. Perhaps you had workers who wanted to work over that period who couldn't because the site was shut. And that might have a bearing on when you can complete. So those are the three main ways the Christmas shutdown period brings people unstuck. The last little nugget I want to impart with you here is that Christmas is a really risky time for cash flow for construction businesses. And there is a very broad concern and anxiety amongst the industry at the moment for builders, particularly in Queensland, where there's financial reporting deadlines on the 31st of December for the Building Commission. So there are a lot of subcontractors out there that are holding their breath, waiting to see if their builders will still be around after they have to pay their wages and their staff when possibly not being paid over Christmas. So when you are coming into the December claim period, December payment claim periods are high risk as it comes anyway, because of the ambiguity around these reference dates and because of the trickery with the admin chaos that builders will try to cause, you're more likely to misstep or make a mistake in your December claim. And when you finally come back in January, because of the confusion around counting business days in January and over December, most subcontractors don't chase their money, or they will unlawfully suspend work too early because they think their due date was already had already come and gone, but their due date may still actually be in the future if they can't calculate their due date properly. So it is a time of the year where you really need to be reaching out to get some help with this type of stuff. If you're having problems or you're not sure, this is the type of thing where a contract administration consultant or a claims consultant or a construction lawyer can help you work out what is your due date for payment. Don't just go suspending work straight away if you don't get paid on the 1st of February or the first week of February. You really need to triage the situation properly, because even if your payment claim due date has come around, if your payment claim wasn't valid because you didn't put it in accordance with the reference date regime, it's possible that you might unlawfully suspend work, even though the time frame that you counted was right. But if your payment claim itself wasn't valid, then you may not have a right to suspend work under the security of payment regime. So there are a lot of moving parts when it comes to Christmas shutdown trickery under builders' contracts. And it is one of those times of the year that builders will milk it for all it's worth, because they know that subcontractors get confused with all of the different moving parts. And so they'll take advantage of that and they'll wait to see if you can work out how to get paid, because the builders themselves are also under financial pressure, having to stretch their prelims and stretch their overheads, where they're not doing work in progress in December like they would for the full month in every other month of the year. Unfortunately, most of these podcasts, it's occurred to me, have been a little bit negative. It's an absolute bloodbath out there. Some of the calls that we're getting are really down and out, and there's some big disputes happening with builders with their clients. We're seeing liquidators being appointed to some southern states builders that have been on the nose. So not so much of a surprise, but really disappointing for those subcontractors who are losing money on that. So just to close out, I'm going to add back here, these are the dates. Maybe screenshot this if you're watching this. Put it in our show notes as well for you, for if you want to go to our podcast and have a look at these dates. But these are the shutdown dates for each state and territory in Australia that are additional non-business days. They're additional because we're in the construction industry and we are special. All right, well, I do think there will be a couple more podcasts before the end of the year, but I am starting to get very much into the festive spirit for December. So if anybody has any topics that they want me to cover in podcasts for 2025, please direct message me in a comment on our socials, because I am always looking for really good topics for things that people are asking about right now. So happy to take requests.
If you have any questions about what I've talked about on this podcast, feel free to drop me a good old-fashioned email at questions@tricksofyourtrade.com.au. If you would like a systematic approach to your contract administration and getting paid, head on over to our website and check out the Subbies Toolbox. You won't be disappointed there. And just one last time, our web address is www.tricksofyourtrade.com.au.
Are you an Aussie tradie and your paperwork is shady? Do the dockers farm site keep you up late at night? Are you sick of pushing paper, swinging your tools more you caper? Call us the tricks of your trade.
Welcome to the Tricks of Your Trade podcast, where we talk about trade business topics to help you get through business life unscathed.
Does the builder pay you late and your cash flow fluctuates? Do you dread the office work? Can't afford a full-time clerk? Consider working smarter. Don't be a business martyr. Call us the tricks of your trade.